Please welcome Jassica Bouvier and Thomas Squire from Area 17.
Oh, wow, they told me you really can't see anything, and you really can't see anything. But thank you so much for being here and listening to our talk. And just to get started, we really wanted to thank Magnific for giving us a slot on this stage today. My name is Thomas. I'm a creative director, and I'm joined by my amazing co-worker and best friend, Jassica. We're from a company called Area 17. We're a design agency based in Paris and New York. We partnered with Magnific towards the end of last year on their transformation from FreePick to the AI native company that you know them as today. We're not going to be doing a traditional kind of like case study talk, but we will be sharing lots of behind the scenes and the cutting room floor of what happened along the way of rebranding Magnific. But we also wanted to talk about the kind of existential crisis that we went on as creative people, trying to brand a company that was really trying to define what creativity means.
Cool. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks again to Magnific and Upscale. So yeah, Area 17, just a little bit about us before we get into the project. We were founded in 2003, and since the beginning, the company has really been about people and making the world a more beautiful and creative place for all people, and this is some of our team.
So Magnific joins some of our kind of leading like technology companies that we work for, and these are companies that are really shaping the future. We work with businesses of all sizes, small and big, whether that's like a startup coming out of stealth with Leighton Labs launching a new frontier model for AI drug discovery, or working with 11 Labs to bring their kind of invisible AI technology to life, or more like legacy players like Samsung that are looking to move into new verticals and kind of adapt to changing customer behavior.
Yeah, and at our core, we are a creative company, of course, and we partner with brands like Getty, Balenciaga, the New York Times, really leading the brands in the world of art and culture, luxury fashion, and media to influence culture and influence our collective cultural life. So Area 17 has always existed at this intersection in the middle of creativity and technology. We've always asked ourselves, how can we see technology as something that can push our creative practice further? And that really is the question that's at the core of this rebrand, and that's the question that Magnific came to us to help them answer. And of course, this is the beautiful brand as we see it here in all its glory. We were like shocked. We came into this venue and we were like, oh my God, it's the end, it's so big. And really at the core of this brand is a question around what is creativity, and a push to all creative people to think about how to rethink their creative workflows and redefine what creativity means to them. So we want to take you on a little journey of, as Thomas said, a little crisis maybe that we were having. Magnific came to us, and they were really thinking about kind of almost in a way disrupting our industry, right? We've been seeing it for many, many years now, but Thomas and I were having so many different conversations about this, and we realized that AI was actually making us reevaluate very, very fundamental things about who we were as people and our identity as creative people. I said to him, you know, it's just so funny how it's making us reevaluate everything we thought was obvious. And he said, I know, it's like I've never thought about what it means to be a creative person before. I just was, until AI made me question it. And part of the reason that we were kind of spiraling out a little bit is because we were seeing all of this discourse online, all of these words like creativity is dead, one-person AI native team, designers are cooked. And this was the discourse that, you know, is still quite rampant today. It's a discourse that we all live in. And on the one side, there are the doomers, the people who say that AI could never make anything artful, that AI can't be creative. The whole conversation is about slop in a really negative way. It's about AI brain rot and AI brain fry. And we knew that we couldn't look to the doomers as inspiration for Magnific's news story. On the other side, we saw people saying things like AI is the future, and that future is all about doing more with less. It was really a narrative of productivity, cost-cutting, efficiency, and we knew we couldn't look there either. And we really came to this conclusion. It was something that we really felt good about, which is that mid is mid, right? There's always been mid work. Slop has always existed, and mid is when you don't have a point of view, when you don't have cultural context, when you don't have something you actually want to say. And great has always been great, and as creative people, we know that. We know when we see something great, when we create something great, we can feel it. And it's about having a really strong point of view, having something that you want to say, having a great idea, having that space and that time to explore, and having the people around you to collaborate with. So for Magnific strategy and the narrative, we knew that we needed to break this binary, a binary that pits human creative expression against technological advancement. We needed to break free of this, kind of get out of the hype cycle, and come up with something new. So how could we do that? Well, we went back to what creativity actually means to us. So for us, this was the basic line that kind of motivated everything throughout the brand, which is that creativity is a mindset, not just a skill set. So it's not something that I can learn in school, it's not a new tool, it's not a new way of working. It really is a mindset that always asks, how can I push further? What can I do next? What can I do today that I couldn't do yesterday? And this was really what the whole entire idea behind Magnific was, and it came to represent the brand. So yes, of course, Magnific, it's the brand name, it's the name of the product, but more than that, it's a call to action. It's an aspiration for creatives everywhere to think of Magnific as a state of mind. To use AI to not just do what you've always done, more of the same, but to use it to do something different. To use it to rewrite the rules and reevaluate what you always thought was obvious to see what you might be capable of doing.
Oh, the slide's been left in. So if, I'm just going to go back one slide. So if that's what being Magnific is all about, how do we actually make a brand world out of that? I think we're really clear on what the concept was and what the idea was. But we actually needed to translate that into a brand world. And it wasn't just your standard rebrand, it was also a name change. So it was a real blank page. So for me as the creative director and the team that worked with me on this project, it was truly like an open book of experimentation. And to do this work, we always start with what is the logo going to be? We always look at the landscape, see what's going on. So there's a lot of abstract symbols. I don't know if anyone's seen the meme of the buttholes. That's not just prevalent in the Gen AI kind of image video space. It's prevalent across all of the AI space. And as somebody who designs logos for a living, I think some of these are great, but a lot of them are kind of really boring. They're not really inspiring. They're not something that you can really feel the value and feel connected in and something that you can own. With that idea of being Magnific and creating Magnific work, we knew we wanted to create a symbol that felt really meaningful, but also something that the community could also really own and bring into their lives and play with it and mess with it. So I'm going to share some of the kind of stuff that was left on the cutting room floor, some of the behind the scenes that I guess you'll never see anywhere else. One of the first ideas that we explored when we tried to think about how do you visualize being Magnific was, of course, thinking about a pair of eyes, maybe like a very on-the-nose concept, but we managed to kind of make it into a bit of an M. It has some eyes. The eyes are very symbolic of having a point of view, and that was something that came up really early in the project, is that having a point of view in the age of AI is super important, so having a symbol that really represents a point of view. It's also one of the senses. It's how we see the world. It's representative of our creative vision. So there was kind of lots of potential here. We did present this as one of our concepts. I was really pushing for it at one point. I just still really love this with this mark and this symbol. But anyway, we continued to explore and found other ways of starting to think about how do we bring in the human aspect. It's something that's really important to Magnific as a brand and as a company, is that the human is always part of the creative act. So there was this idea of having a hand. Hand is representative of doing the work and really being in there with the tools. But there was this idea of the finishing touch, putting the Magnific kind of dot on the I's and crossing your T's, which was a really interesting idea. We're also thinking about how do people kind of author their work? What's a symbol of authorship and residues of care? So we looked at thinking about, is the logo just a signature, and every single time you see the logo, it's a different signature, something that potentially could be really interesting, and it would be a true commitment to human in the loop creative work. Then we went in a different direction and started to explore something that's a bit more abstract, thinking about the brain as a place where all kind of creative ideas start, and hiding a little M in the middle of the brain, but maybe a little bit too kind of organic for was right for Magnific, and then went in a completely different direction and was looking at like an everyday object, something that's very mundane, the complete opposite of what we would think of as like magnific and magnificence. But arguably, like most creative work actually happens when we sit in a chair and just kind of let our minds wander. We just thought there was something really interesting in it just being a chair. Of course, that's not what the logo was. Where we eventually landed was on this idea of being monumental. It was an idea that allowed us to kind of look back on the great things that inspire us and are kind of awe-inspiring, whether that's like a man-made monument or things of nature. It was an idea that really resonated with everyone, and it really felt like when you're doing magnificent work, you're reaching your pinnacle, you're being at your most talented, all of these buildings and shapes and forms really represent that feeling. So we felt good about this. So then the task became, how do we find the right form and the right shape that really represents that feeling? So of course, it made sense to explore the M. The M is the short form version of Magnific. Don't know why it's not looping, but we'll move on. And then that's where we landed on the symbol that you all know today and hopefully love. It's been really great to see. Oh, I'll let you clap. Yay. I mean, I hope you do all love it because, you know, we all have to look at it every day in the tool and it's everywhere. And it's been really amazing to see it come to life in like a physical way, as Jessica said, the arches outside the conference, on all of the merch. I think something that one of the designers said is that he really just wanted the logo to feel like, it just needs to feel like the word Magnific, and I really feel like we've achieved that. Now we've seen it in the physical space. It really feels like we made something that's like the next monument of the world, even though it's just a logo. Then, moving beyond the logo, the next kind of pillar of the brand to really solve for Magnific was what's our hero color going to be. I'm sure you're all familiar with the tools. I know we're in all of them every day. Lots of kind of neon green, brat green. Not the nicest colors, a little bit sickly. I wouldn't say the most optimistic and inspiring. Players like Adobe just owning a single color. And then kind of a lot of black and white, like nobody really being that really ambitious with how they're using color. And then if anyone remembers Freepik, they were, of course, known for being blue. So there was definitely a clear choice to be made here, but maybe a controversial one. And we were maybe most worried about presenting this, and that choice is, of course, what is now known as Magnific Magenta. And when we presented this, we were a little bit apprehensive, but we got in the room, and everybody at Magnific really loved it and felt like it was the total right choice. And I think the reason for that is that it's historically a color that people veer away from, and that's the opposite of what Magnific is about. They're bold and they're brave, and they want to go against the grain. I think this also builds on other brands that have used pink in that way in the tech space. If we think back to like T-Mobile back in the day, or like more recently like Lyft and Klarna, like pink is really this color of rebelliousness and bravery, which is what the Magnific brand is all about. And again, it's fun to see everybody kind of embracing the pink and wearing a little bit of pink, but not going like too crazy with it. We're still quite intentional with the use of it. And then the third and final kind of pillar of the brand identity was the kind of graphic system, which was all based off of the monumental M shape. So it creates this dynamic visual language. What we really wanted to get across with this shape language is this idea of expanding, stretching, pushing beyond the edge. So whether it's in motion or whether it's static, you always get that feeling of like, I'm pushing, I'm always like moving forward. And when we bring all of those elements together, that's what creates the Magnific brand. Those elements on themselves are very, very core to the brand, but we also really want to champion what's possible with the platform. So often the assets and the visuals and the art direction are really there and supported by the elements that we kind of defined for the brand. And then I'm just going to play one of the videos we made for the launch campaign, which some of you may have seen on social media when we first launched. I feel like I've listened to that soundtrack like so many times going through the edits of that video, but it never gets old because it always gives me tingles at the end. It's kind of very epic. So that kind of brings us to the end of the first part of our talk and into the second part, which we're calling like the 5 new rules of creativity. If the Magnific brand is really about reinventing yourself as a creative person and how you do your work, that's of course happening to us as well in our work that we do at Area 17. So these are kind of the 5 things that are changing about the behavior that we see in the work that we do. So thinking about the old model of creativity before AI came to exist, there used to be some time at the start of the process where we'd really be focused on like, okay, what's the idea? But most of the time as creatives, the part that we want to protect is the making part. We know how long it takes to get to a good result, spending lots of time in the details, lots of iteration, lots of polish. So that was historically what we've always protected. And what we're kind of seeing, and even as an agency, like what we're asked to deliver on now is, okay, now AI is here, that making time is shrinking. I know it's still not one prompt and done, but it's actually a much smaller timeline to get to great. So we're asked, how are you moving quicker and cheaper and more effectively with AI? But we actually don't think that's the right way to think about this new technology, because we don't just want to make the same things but faster. We actually want to make new things. So the way that we're starting to think about it and the way that we talk to our clients is actually doing the opposite and expanding more of the time spent on the idea versus the making. Because so many people can make now. And something that kept happening to us on the Magnific project, which was interesting, was that when we're trying to showcase what these tools can do, without a good idea, you tend to see a lot of the same things, like there's always horses or dogs. It's always like the same things that we tend to show because we didn't spend enough time in the idea phase. So we call this rule worship the idea. Worship being really, really intentional. Because worship is very behavioral and it's very habitual. You kind of need to do it over and over and over again. We can often get into an idea really quickly and just start running into the making, whereas we really like to spend time really pulling that idea apart and making it great before we then move into the making part.
Okay, so we have the idea, and now how does it change how we collaborate? So in the old model, creativity really looked a lot like a kind of production process. It was quite linear. So I'm a strategist, I have a particular skill set, and then I pass off to Thomas as a designer, and he does his thing, and we pass off to an engineer. So it was really this kind of game of passing the task along a line to get to the end result. And in the new model, our skill sets have really expanded. Oh, it's the old model. In the new model, our skill sets have really expanded. So now, as a strategist, I don't just put words on a page and give that to a designer. I can actually make tangible real-world things. So when I'm having a conversation with someone, I can say, hey, this is what I made, and that person can also bring what they made. So the process looks a lot more like a circle than it does a linear process. We're kind of ping-ponging back and forth. We're iterating. It's much more continuous. And it's really, really great because we get to the making faster. It becomes so much more tangible, so much more easy to see. And we call the second rule, make in the medium. And it's really about the new normal for how we collaborate as an agency. It's not this linear process where we expect someone to kind of ingest what I'm saying, and then later on, months later, we kind of get like a bad carbon copy of the intention. It's everyone making together at the same time. And this is not to say that we don't appreciate or respect specialty or expertise. Of course, that's more important than ever, but it's really about how do you supercharge that expertise? How do you bring that specialty to life in a better model of collaboration?
What I really, sorry, I was just going to add on that. What I really love about the way that this has changed how we collaborate is we also do a lot of kind of digital projects at Area 17, building websites. And this idea of like making in the medium and like ping-ponging with each other, we'd spend a lot of time like not understanding each other because we're just using text. It's the only way that we can communicate and collaborate across our different disciplines. And now so much of the work is actually like firing a HTML file, or like even a comment is just like, oh, I just did this really quickly, and like you're really like you're so much closer to the work that you're doing, and you're not in this abstract layer of just having to communicate with words only. So I think this has like totally changed how we work with each other in a really, really cool way. Moving into the fourth rule, it's going a little bit back into what it's like to be a creative person and do the work that we do. Historically, in the old model of creativity, we are in that process from start to finish. The human is literally in the loop, making everything all the way along. So we know what we've invested in, what we've skipped over, the parts that we know need more work, and every single decision that makes it into the final thing has been decided by the human. Whereas in the new model, it's the total reverse of that, because you get a really close to great output really early on in the process. So the skills that you need become very, very different, and they become more about critique. You really need to be able to critique the work. I know the outputs that come out first, there's going to be 6 fingers, and that's changing now, but there's always lots of flaws like that are wrong. But AI is actually filling in a lot of the gaps for us. And what we find is that to make the work go from good to great is to really spend a lot of time pulling the work apart and making sure that we're responsible for all of the things that make it into the final thing that we're creating, rather than have AI fill in a lot of the gaps. So this idea of being a good critique, we call being a hater. So I know that can sometimes be negative, but I think being a hater is a true art form. And I think when you're really good at it, it's really appreciated by everyone that you're around, because you're able to critique the work in a really, really nuanced way and be really, really specific about your feedback. Whereas historically, you could kind of get away in a group setting with comments like, oh, this doesn't look great, or let's change this, let's change that. Whereas now you really have to get into the weeds of why one thing is better than the other, because there's so much variation now. We're so overwhelmed by how quick it is to make variation. To actually choose between them, you have to be really good at critique. The other way that I think about being a hater is that the models themselves are designed to always push us to the middle. So if we've all got lots of ideas and we're all making around the same idea, we're always going to be pushed and gravitate towards the middle, because that's what the model always wants us to do. So I always say it's about being allergic to average. How do we get away from average, get away from the center? Again, being really good at critiquing the work. Back to you.
Yeah, so when we think about how you develop that sense of what is good and what is bad and what that means to you, I think it's really all about you. It's your perspective. And as creative people, you spend basically your entire life cultivating that point of view, right? And that's the thing you sell. That's your pride. And I think what's really interesting is now we have this world where there are kind of agents that are always kind of lurking around us, right? It's kind of this always-on creative collaborator. You can just get on your phone in the middle of the night and talk to someone. I think there's a real risk here, because it means that you can kind of easily lose that perspective that you've spent your entire life cultivating. And so we think that in this new world, you really need to be very, very vigilant, and this is our fourth rule, about not skipping you. And at Area 17, there are 2 ways that we kind of think about it. The first way is anytime we work on something, we always relate it back to the cultural context and to what came before it. So we're always asking, what is this inspired by? Where did this come from? Who made this before? And so we really think it's a great way to kind of just ground all of the work in something real and tangible that happened before. And the other way is kind of less concrete, more abstract. And it's really about a feeling. When you're authentically connecting to someone, to what you've made. When it's an expression of your point of view. And I think that feeling is something that we really are constantly striving for.
Cool. And then moving into our 5th rule, which was kind of a co-creation and one that truly came out of this project with Magnific. We worked really closely with Martin LeBlanc, who gave the keynote yesterday, with him and his team and a lot of the art directors that work at Magnific, to try and define if we're going to be a brand about always pushing beyond, pushing what's possible, we actually have to show up like that in the world. We actually have to be making that work as a company of people. But what was really challenging is how do you define that? So we had to really get back into basics. In the old model, we're all familiar with the mediums that we get to explore within, whether it's video, photography, design, illustration, all things that are possible on the Magnific platform. And then we've historically had, very siloed from that, just tools, technologies, software that allow us to manipulate these mediums. But what's really changing with AI and the platform that Magnific is building is that they're somewhat moving closer together in a way that hasn't really been possible before. AI really isn't is able to understand all the mediums all at once in a way that software and the tools that we've had previously just haven't enabled us to do. So we kind of call that AI as a medium. AI in and of itself is creating things that were never possible before, and that really exists in that space. That's everything we've kind of seen from everybody that's presented their work at this conference, which is really amazing to see. So the space of traditional mediums that have been explored forever, we've already kind of found the edge of what's possible with all of these mediums. And now with AI as a medium, there's lots of uncharted territory which we're yet to find. And that was really at the crux of what Martin and I, as we collaborated, we're trying to understand how do we explore within this area and what does this area look like. But to define something that hasn't been explored yet is like really, really hard. So this becomes like the hardest of the rules to actually apply, and it's more like an ambition and a rally cry for all of us to actually explore what this space actually consists of. And the only like little piece of advice that I feel from our like exploration in trying to uncover what exists in this territory is just going back to the idea of constraints. I think we often see everywhere in AI, it's like just make anything, but it's actually like it's make something. So if you give yourselves constraints, set yourself a brief, it's actually much easier to kind of go deeper and really find like the edge of AI, as Martin calls it. We did a riff on that and we call it Journey to the Edge. Because it is really a journey. Sometimes you don't get to go that far. It just doesn't pan out that way. Sometimes you're going really far and finding the new edge of what's possible with this technology. So we wanted to end on that one because it's a true kind of like inspirational, like, let's go find where this new edge is. And we're so at the beginning of what's possible with this technology that this is kind of the job of everybody in this room today. So thank you so much for listening to our talk. And if you want to hear any more about the behind the scenes of the rebrand, like grab us after, and happy to answer any questions. But thank you so much.